ends up being 20 minutes, doesn't matter because there's no ads are going to fill the thing anyway. So,
Dun, 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 dun. Are we back?
And I'm sure, Janet, we're back.
Did you write this up, Zach?
I did.
You did?
Who? I didn't
Oh,
write.
okay.
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
and by,
it was Liz's thing. Okay, got it. I thought, never mind. I got confused and thought some of these were like insider notes, but I think this is all still Liz because it's a really interesting.
yeah, she wrote a long
what you
one.
put. It's cool.
Yeah. No, I wrote it. Like Erica went to do it, and I was like showing her because she hadn't done it before, and I'm like, well, there's 2 questions, so I'll just copy and paste these real quick, and bam, we'll call it good. I should see because I did put out another all call to see if any more questions
There
were
wasn't.
coming
I
in.
just looked.
Just looked, nothing.
That's what I was doing. I was trying to look to see.
Break on through to the other side.
Let me get my pile of notes here.
You got a pile of notes.
Yeah, you don't look at all these notes I
note
got.
pile.
Look at all these notes I got.
Episode wasn't even
Are
that
any of
long.
them about this?
No.
Let's
see. This says this is a conversation with Bob Mata. This side
Cool.
says Susan Simpson. Let's see what this one is.
Cool.
This is back from Thanksgiving.
Great.
I just keep writing
Back
on the
from
same pieces of
Thanksgiving.
paper.
This is one of those situations too where I got to remember what this will, because so I had some time off because of the snow days, and then also I'm going to be gone out of town next week at that conference. So I've already recorded this week's episode and am prepped to record tomorrow for next week's episode. So like I'm gonna like wait, no, we're not. That's not yet.
Delia
They haven't
Diambra.
heard this. This is all Delia.
But you guys really didn't talk about a lot. I mean, you talked about a lot, but not about a lot.
Right.
So
talk more about her work than the cases. I always struggle when I have those. Well, I'll talk about this when we get on there. But it's always like I don't want to give away everything on their podcast.
Right.
You want people to go listen to it.
No, for sure. That's a tough. Yeah, that's a tough balance.
Do we have any housekeeping?
No.
Okay.
I mean, no. Just like what's coming up in a couple of weeks.
But that's the end.
Yeah. A little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Not necessarily housekeeping, but I do want to talk about upfront what's going on with season 17.
Can I just start the podcast and be like, "Sup, bitches"?
Yeah, that'd be great if you could do that.
Ahoy, friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way. Let's transition to this new.
It's
2025, y'all.
Yeah, let's get this show on the road. Let's let's end the pregame. We got some people. We got 25 in the live chat here. What's up, guys?
Hey, everybody. Oh, sorry for the on.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop the pregame. So pre-gamers, thank you guys for tuning in. We very much appreciate your support. Helping us keep the lights on, and hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, pre-gamers.
Bye, guys.
Why are you whispering?
Because it feels right.
Can't argue with that. Can't argue with feelings.
Just feels right.
All right, JV, you ready to hit record?
Ooh, Liz said, "Ahoy, bitches."
Yeah, there you go. I am recording.
Also recording.
Me too.
1, 2, 3. Seemed like a big delay, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
It's all right.
And yet it seemed perfect for me. So that I guess that shows the delays on my side.
Yeah. All right.
Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning into Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for season 16, episode 6. This week, Bob was joined by Delia Diambra to discuss her incredible podcast, Counterclock. Today, Bob and I are joined again by our incredible co-host, Janet Varney. The gang is back together, and we are here to listen to you. And we are here to answer your listener questions. JV, we missed you. I'm happy you're back.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, I told you this in a text, and I mentioned it on the pregame, but I wanted to still listen to the full pregame and the full follow-up last week, not just to stay caught up, but because, you're a real part of my every week, and I feel the absence. So, and I heard that people were concerned and asking questions about, Southern California and wanting to make sure I was okay and everything. So I just want to give everyone a very heartfelt shout out and a thank you for thinking about that. And, it's a long road to hoe. We're okay. I'm in San Francisco now, but really appreciate people, being concerned and all the good feelings out there.
Yep. And for everybody, hang on. What am I going to say? Sorry, Erica. Yeah, and Janet, we are so glad to have you back, and I'm sure. Well, I know that when you listened to last week, you heard the kind of nonsense that Zach and I get up to when you're not around, and we've already been scolded via
Yes.
text message. Something about our dingbats talking about donuts, something like
I
that.
said I'm listening to you two ding dongs talking about donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we don't have many questions for this week's episode, so it'll be probably pretty short and sweet. And Janet's busy. It's been kind of a weird week for Zach and I because it's we had MLK Day, no school this week, and then we had not a snow day, but a 25 below zero, too cold to go to the bus stop day yesterday and today, which is Wednesday. So hasn't been in school all week. I think that the schedule's a little wonky. Been getting a lot of other stuff done. Been getting us caught up with episodes ahead, which at the end we'll talk about what we got coming up. But I do want to just take a minute to talk to you guys a little bit about where we're at with our season 17 case. I'm still calling it potential, but it's looking good. So I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I had several meetings with several lawyers talking about the case. They did send us the case file. Erica has been fully through the entire trial record, has summarized all of that, and she recommended us moving forward with that after her review of the trial record. So that's looking good. She's now going through different elements of the police file to start breaking those things down and comparing. So we have certain questions about how things shook out. That's looking good. Did hear from the attorney yesterday, and they said it sounds like they have discussed this with the person that is in prison, and they are all for it. The attorneys that I've been working with, they are all for it. Now they have to. There's like one more level above them. It sounds like they need to get the final approval on what everything looks like moving forward. But it's looking like our season 17 case is all but selected. If not, we've done a whole lot of reading about a case that you guys aren't going to hear about. But that's going well. I'm super excited to get into that one.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yep. And we were going to talk about this in the pregame since we only got, I think, a couple of questions here before we get into.
Do you want to answer these questions first, or do you want to talk about this first?
Well, that's why I said I was going to talk about this first, Zach.
But it doesn't seem like a good spot to talk about, Bob.
I just want to speak on behalf of everyone else and say no one is following what you're saying, but I bet you know that already.
Wait, about what?
About what
Anything.
he's about to talk about?
Yeah.
Anything.
I think you just leave all that in there. That's wonderful.
That's terrible. It's my favorite. Before we get into that, I'm going to talk about this. Bob, do you want to talk about this?
I thought in my mind it would be better to answer the questions pertaining to the actual episode first.
I'm trying to think of where the fuck we were at for Erica to figure out an edit point there.
That's why you pay her the big bucks.
Yeah, she'll figure it out. You'll figure it out, Erica. Okay, so since Janet thinks no one knows what I'm talking about and Zach doesn't agree with the direction I'm going, we're going to back up. Fuck you guys. So after I said da 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 da, I don't remember what I said. Something about a whole lot of questions. We go this. So we don't have a whole lot of questions this week. So we're going to go ahead and get through those and talk about the information about Delia's case, and we're going to talk a little bit about a trip I took this week with my students because I know people are interested in that when those podcasts are coming out. But first and foremost, what do you guys think of the Delia episode?
Go ahead, JV.
I thought it was great. I definitely listened to. I am behind one season, so the season that you guys were talking a little bit about is the one season that I'm like, oh no, I haven't gotten to it yet. And I know there's a bunch of episodes, and it's a doozy. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the work that Delia has done, and it was fun to hear you guys have a conversation again. And it's always interesting, like, similar to recent conversations that you've had with other podcasters and other investigators and other journalists. It's always interesting to hear where there's overlap and then where there are unique differences where, I love being a fly on the wall for those types of conversations. And similar to the Australian, right? The guy that you were talking to who's had this
Ryan
kind
Wolf.
of Ryan. Yeah. Sorry, Ryan. I blanked, but having that participation with a detective or, just having that one person on the quote unquote inside who's like helping you move through a case is just so it still feels so unusual for so many of
Mhm.
us. And so it's always interesting to hear about that. And there are some really the couple of comments and questions that we do have are really great. And I agree with everyone's people who are interested in hearing about all of the ways that who you are as a person, what you look like, where you come from, like in what way people can relate to you will have such a huge impact on the kind of information that you can get. And sometimes the thing that people think is going to play against you plays in your favor, like being like a chatty young woman. People
Yeah.
might think like, "Oh, I feel totally comfortable talking to you," and not realize that like, no, this is a badass and a hard ass, and
Yeah.
everything that you're saying is going to be used, whether it's to your advantage or not. If you're, a bad actor in this.
Yeah, and Delia does this. She has one of those faces that she just looks very innocent and sweet, and she's young, and so I
Yeah.
love that. I know we have a question about that. One of the couple questions we have, so I'll wait to dig into it. But yeah, that was a super interesting part of it. Which is
I really like when you and Delia start talking about the idea of getting too close to individuals involved.
Mhm.
That was a great part. Great point, Zach.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that because obviously I've witnessed it firsthand. I've witnessed you with Ed,
Mhm.
and obviously this worked out really well.
Yeah.
But the conversation you guys had was really nice to hear, and it's interesting because there is that aspect of where's the line and how do you draw that line?
Yeah.
Because there's points where, like, with Ed, how do you draw that line? You talk to him all the time. You were there. I mean, it's tough. You move on. I know you got pretty close to Liz in Sandy's case.
Mhm.
Talking to Liz multiple times a week, and it's difficult. So moving forward, for you to have to take yourself and put a line in and say I cannot cross this line is got to be extremely difficult.
It is for me. Liz is a little different situation because she's on the outside, and like we still talk, and we
Mhm.
become close friends, and so like I feel like I can go through everything that's happening with her as a friend, as opposed to like somebody who's got like you become friends with, but they're like all of their hopes are all resting kind of on your shoulders. Like they're just
Mm.
desperately hoping that you're going to be the one that's going to finally set them free. It's hard, and it is difficult. I have, I don't talk about it much, but I have people that cases that we've worked before where they're still in prison where they'll still call and write and a lot of times it's hard with my schedule, like, because I'm working so many jobs, I can't pick up the phone when I'm at school. But where I have those moments where I'm just like, man, I'm just like, I'm still here doing the work, but I'm always afraid of getting so close because that was so touch and go with Ed. So if you guys think back to season 2, when Ed got released, we went through a wave of emotion that week where in a matter of days we had DNA testing out, and the DNA testing came back and yielded nothing. And we were kind of at a point where we were like, this is it. Like, this is our last chance. And I remember like when that came back, that episode when we found out Ed was free, and Mike captured that moment when I was talking to Allison when she was telling me like just the sobbing on both of our parts. Like we had just been through sobbing 2 days before that because it was like, this is it. And, we're going to get him out of here. And then it came back. They're like, there's nothing usable in this DNA. And it was just like, it hurt. So it was like a brother that you just found out you can't help anymore. And that pain in that moment
Mm.
was kind of an awakening for me. And in his case, then 2 days later, it's like, while you're still grieving that, it's like the parole board is setting him free. And just like, oh my God, like, I'm gonna cry thinking
Yeah.
about it now.
Mhm.
But it has definitely caused me to where, like Jesse and I, got real close. We talked all the time, but that was during that time when that was happening, right? So I was working on Jesse's case when this happened with Ed's case, and it's one of those where I just like always on my mind, but just try to I can't I and I don't know if it's the right or wrong thing to do, but it's hard for me to make that connection because like or to make the connection is not the right word, not the right phrase for it, but it's just like I try to keep everything at arm's length because I'm just it's a scary position to be in all the time.
Mhm.
I'm too much of an empath, is if that's a thing, to where like it's
No,
too hard on me to do
Yeah.
that.
for sure. And I think, you hit the nail on the head, whether you meant to or not, which is like, I don't think that there is a right and wrong for the most part. I mean, I think there's might be like an ultimate wrong. Like, you might be able to identify, like, this is categorically not the right thing to do, or like, you can't
Right.
do XYZ. And then beyond that, everything is kind of in the gray, because you have to everybody's different, and everybody has a different level of emotional investment, and everybody has a different ability to compartmentalize, and you have to know yourself, and you have to know what you are capable of and what you need to do to protect yourself, so that you can move forward and continue doing the work. And that doesn't mean anybody's getting left behind. It just means, like, how will I be able to function and serve the people in my life, including the people from past seasons, that, everyone knows what your intentions are, and everyone knows that you're passionate about getting justice for these folks. So, like, you've done the work. The foundation is there. Now it's just about how you keep it going. And that's going to look different for every type of person. And it might be different for Delia. Like, that might be a different level of, emotional investment or whatever, because out of necessity for her. The important thing is the work is getting done. And also, I'll say, that's one of the things that's so beautiful about the Truth and Justice Army, is that there are wonderful people, we talk about them all the time on this podcast, who have picked up that connection and are showing up for people every day, that,
Yeah.
are part of our community. And people from past seasons know that, the Jennifers of the world are representative of not just them, but like all of the people that stand behind them, and you.
Yeah, and it does. It affects. Susan had just said in the chat that you have to protect yourself so you can keep up helping other people. It is like that's part of it, right? So like taking on a new case, a new thing, and if I have this thing that's like weighing me down over here, then it affects the way that I can look at and act. So, and exactly what you just said, the people we have, we have Kathy in the chat right now, who's
Kathy, McElhaney, and
yeah,
Jesse. Yeah.
so close with Jesse, and she said she talked to Jesse today, and he's getting really emotional about his case. Hopefully we're coming to a conclusion on his case. But that's like part of, and Teresa, who just has been visiting Jody in prison, and that's part of like the crowdsourcing nature of what we do. Like, that's a big part. You always hear me say it, but you don't understand how big of a part of it is. Like, I can't go be I can't go be best friends with everybody. It's not because I don't want to. I just don't have. It is not even that I don't have the time. It's I don't have the emotional bandwidth to do it. There's too much going on. So
Yeah.
that's like part of like, if part of what we're doing is we're introducing this case, and then some of you listeners are then reaching out to these people, and you're so we're providing that. I feel like we as a team, all of us together, we're providing that emotional support that the people need, and because that's a thing that I just can't give of myself all the time the way that I used to, because it was dangerous for me to do it that way.
Well,
Uh,
sure. And that's the true nature of, like, when a community is successful, is that we're there for each other to kind of help carry that load, you know?
yeah, I just feel so good when I see, when Teresa posted the other week, when she posted the picture when she went to visit Jody in prison, and took a picture with them. It's just like, it feels so good, because it's like there's like Jody has that because of the work we're all doing. Jody has that. If Jody has nothing else, Jody has that person. They have their person that's there, that's supporting them, that's being that friend to them. And so all of you and that's everybody. I always said, like, whenever I get interviewed about the show, and like what does the crowdsourcing mean? It's such a, I just so with the case that we're looking at coming up, the attorneys are asking me, like, what is this crowd? What do you mean by crowdsourcing? What does it look like? I said, it looks like a lot of things. It looks like
Mm.
people who can pick through crime scene photos and find things that nobody's found before. It looks like people that can read through trial transcripts and police files and make connections that nobody considered before. It looks like people becoming pen pals and becoming friends to the people that are in prison and providing the emotional support that they need. It looks like people who are going to write a check the second we need money for DNA testing, or what, or then it looks like people who have some obscure expertise that suddenly comes up in this crime, in this investigation where we need help with something, and there's somebody there that knows how to do it. Like, that's what it looks like, nothing I've ever seen before. And that's it's what I love most about doing this work, is the community aspect of it, how everybody's just there. Like, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something, and that's the best
Yeah.
part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that was a great way. Your conversation with Delia was a great way to kind of reconnect with that. And and remind us, and those conversations that you have between seasons or between specific cases, or as we're waiting on some more material for Jodi's case and all of that, being able to touch base with that. And it's both nice to step outside of things for a minute and look at big picture stuff, but it's also nice when you're having these conversations that kind of reminds us why we're all here. So I thought it was a great conversation, and I love what Delia has been doing. Should we get into a couple of what listeners had to say and ask?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so Sarah says, well, she just says she really appreciates having Delia on. She knows that the season 7 case of Counterclock reminds her a lot of Jennifer Jeffley's case. I feel like Jennifer Jeffley's been coming up for us a lot, like
I know
lately, and I don't know. We just keep thinking about her. I really hope there's good stuff happening there.
Yeah, I hope so. I haven't heard anything about her case in a while. What's happening? That case was so tragic, and it was one of those that was so frustrating for me because, Jennifer is like under any circumstances, Jennifer should not be still in prison today for that crime. Yeah. Even if she was convicted of what they said she did, a 15-year-old girl keeping lookout for somebody that did this, like this, enough's enough. But I don't think that's even the case. What happened? I think she was set up in the whole thing. But yeah, she's another one of those that just never leaves your mind. And unfortunately, with that one, it was an attorney that came in. It's I don't want to get into it because it just pisses me off. It pisses me off when I still remember that attorney telling me is like, "Oh, you're going to do this whole. You're like, I'm going to have her out by February." I'm like, dude, you don't know what I told the family then, like, this guy has not a fucking clue what he's doing if he thinks in 2 months he's going to have her out of prison. And here we are, 3 years later.
Yeah. I kind of forgot about that, to be honest, until you just brought that up. I forgot that happened.
Yeah, I know. And that was just, we were deep into it enough that, people were really, really engaged, and we really felt like we were getting somewhere. So, we're sending our best to Jennifer. And Liz says, this question has actually been ruminating for a couple of weeks from a previous episode where you discussed the importance of asking for a lawyer whenever being questioned by police. Would you recommend taking this advice even at earlier / more informal stages of interaction with law enforcement? Liz, I'm so glad you asked this because I always wondered that too. Like, what level are we talking about? When giving a witness statement on scene, filing a police report, etc. Like what's the line for you? Because the way you talk about teaching your kiddos, it really seems like it's like, if you want to talk to me at all about anything, period, from the jump, like zero, I want a lawyer. But how is that true? First
of all, not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer.
Of course.
I think I legally have to make sure I'm making that clear. I don't know, because like it's so hard with my kids. What I've told them is, first and foremost, do not say a word. And I've told them, in that circumstance, even if you're a witness to something, even if you have nothing to do with it, you're just there as a witness. If the police want to talk to you, first step is, I want my dad here. I'm not saying anything until my dad's here, so that I can assess the situation before we go any further with it. I feel like if you are someone who is in no way connected to, or thought to be connected to, or could not possibly be thought to be connected to it, and you're literally just a witness, then sure, if you're standing across the street and you watch something happen, and the police are like, "What did you see?" This is what I saw. I don't see any problem with that. But I think in any circumstances where you're talking to the police, where there's any possible way where there could be any implication whatsoever that you could be involved in that situation, in my opinion, it's no. It's lawyer. I'm not talking to you. It's, am I free to go? If I am, then I'm leaving. And if I'm not, then I want a lawyer. And that's hard to say. Like, I have so many cop friends who just like get frustrated with that. And they're like, well, how are we supposed to solve a case? I'm like, I don't know. Evidence, I guess. Like, you need evidence. I told you at the beginning of this that I got to remember where I'm at, because I've done 2 other interviews that you guys haven't heard yet. But there's one coming up that I'll talk about at the end of the show, where we just had this like, I'm listening to this case and I'm like, none of those situations where if that person had said lawyer, they would not be in prison. It's one of those where it's like, in this particular situation, it's like, there's this thing like somebody's seen at a gas station. Completely innocuous, would mean nothing to the investigation. The only reason it means something to the investigation is because they gave an interview prior to that and left the gas station out of that narrative. Right? When they're just like, oh, I went and did this and this and this. And then they see, oh, here's evidence you went to this gas station. Now it's you're lying to us. And it's presented to a jury as you lied to us. And it's like, what would that have looked like if they had just said lawyer and they never put a statement on the record? And the only evidence they have is that they were at a gas station. It means nothing. It's literally the fact that they gave that interview without an attorney present that caused them to get convicted.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you guys?
And to your point, yeah. Well, I mean, you were just like you were saying, if someone's saying, if you have a cop friend who's like, how are we going to solve it? You're not saying I'm not going to talk to you at all. You're just saying like, I want to do this in a way that protects me per my constitutional rights.
I think if they start asking, I feel like if the questions start asking about you and what you're doing, then you should have an attorney present. So if it's like, oh, you were across the street, what did you see? Well, this is what I saw. If the next question is, so what were you doing leading up to this? Nope.
Right.
I'm not. I'm not doing it. And it's so the hardest thing is to get people to understand in the moment, because it goes against, I think, most people's nature. It goes against my nature. Like if you're an innocent person and you're just trying to help, there's just that thing in you that's like, I just want to help. I'm just trying to help them. Or surely if I just explain to them what happened, then this will be all cleared up. But it never is. It never is.
I mean, maybe sometimes it is, but why take the risk of being a person that it isn't ever?
I'm a big risk to reward kind of
not
guy.
Worth it.
Yeah,
not worth it. Not worth it. Okay, well, Liz, I hope that clears it up for you. In this episode, Liz also says, I really appreciated, and it's kind of what we were talking about before, I really appreciated Delia's observations about how being a young female interviewer can really put people at ease and even lead them to underestimate her. Does Bob feel like his physical presence sometimes has the opposite effect? Has Erica ever gotten to take a crack at the interviewer role? I'd be curious to know if her experience would differ significantly.
She has not taken the interviewer role. We just talked about this in the pregame, but as of right now, the plan is both Erica and I are going back to school to get our criminal justice degrees to get licensed as private investigators. So in a couple of years, I think that Erica may be in that role where she'll actually be going out and doing interviews on her own. Not right now, she hasn't. I think that Erica's presence with me has helped sometimes. As far as like my physicality when I'm going up to interview somebody, it depends. There's times when it helps, and there's times when it hurts. There's some times where, think like Jamie Snow case, right? And we're like going to interview these guys from like prison gangs and biker gangs and stuff, and I come in big tattooed guy wearing a Carhartt button up, and I kind of I play the part, I try to assess the situation and just try to like talk in a way where I can relate to somebody, and it's been very helpful for me. And there's other times where I'll go to interview somebody where my costume for the day will be long sleeve, button up shirt, no tattoos exposed, try to look, dressed up. I try to be conscious of that. And you got to try to be kind of charming enough to get people to be comfortable with you and open up to you. But there's definitely times I think where people look at me and they're immediately on edge. Sometimes that's a hindrance. Sometimes it's a help. Sometimes it's, there's been time, Mike always called it my retired cop costume, when we were working on Jesse's case a lot in that neighborhood. I wore a sidearm and wore my blue BDU pants that I wore when I was on the fire department. And I looked like a cop when I was up there. And that, again, sometimes that in certain situations that might cause people not to talk to you. In other situations, it causes people to think, oh, I kind of need to talk to him. Like he seems to be in a position of authority. But it was interesting to hear Delia's experience with that, because like I said, she's very young. She has a innocent face. She's an attractive young woman. And I think that, yeah, I just loved the fact when she explained that, how people underestimate her. Because as you
Yeah.
know, if anybody's listened to Counter Clock, Delia is a badass.
Uh-huh.
Like, she is an
Yeah.
absolute badass, and she is extremely intelligent, and she is very good at her job. And so I think that underestimation, like, I love how that works in her favor. Like, they're like, "Oh, this sweet lady wants to talk to me. Of course I'll talk to her. What's she gonna do?"
Yeah.
And then she, like, hammers them. Like, it's
Oh,
it's the
totally.
best. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Colin says, "Hi all. Interesting that you brought up whether Delia's cases are investigated in real time or upfront. I'm much more a fan of the real-time investigation. I find it easier to buy into as opposed to just hearing a story. With that in mind, can we be brought into the next case earlier than when we were with Jody's, please?" And if I could just interject, this question surprised me, Colin, because I felt like we came in super early, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, we did, but the thing with Jody's case is there's always going to be, as I'm talking to these attorneys for this next case, I always explain to them, my number one goal, like, my last priority is making a podcast. My number one goal is to do the investigative work to find the things that are going to get somebody out of prison. Um, and for example, in Jody's case, like, you guys were pretty early, like, we weren't fully, we hadn't been through everything in the case file yet. We had just kind of done our initial, like, reading and screening of it, and started before we started doing the putting the series together. But in that case, there were people that we needed to talk to that would have been great to do them in real time on the podcast. But I also had all these reports that the police department may in the past have front run people. Like, if they hear you're going to go find somebody to talk to them and try to get an affidavit, that they would go ahead of you and try to fend that off and get them not to talk to you or get them not to sign the affidavit. So, the biggest thing in Jody's case was, the linchpin of their case was Sonia Lucas's testimony. And so and there was a big concern of the people involved in the case that if you announce that you're going to go talk to Sonia Lucas, somebody's going to go talk to her first. Or if people know that you're doing this podcast, they're going to go talk to her first. So in that case, I went to go interview her before anyone ever knew we were doing the pod. What I didn't expect was that was going to blow the whole case up right there.
Sure.
So it's usually not like that. But the thing is, it's always I try to do my best to do things. And Erica being here is a help, because she's so good at her job, I'm able to do the due diligence of reading through, looking for conflicts, looking for problems, looking for indications that this wasn't a wrongful conviction, where I can still unpack those things kind of in real time on my own. So the case that we're looking at, I haven't read the trial transcripts yet, but Erica has. And so she read them, wrote summaries of everybody's testimony, and then gave me her assessment of how she felt about that. And in this case, she, because I said, you've heard the pitch from the innocent side. Now you've seen the whole prosecution's case. Was there, what was in there, or was there anything in there that made you question whether this is a wrongful conviction? She said, no. Everything I found, and she kind of broke down a couple things that were in there that came out, and she still feels it's a wrongful conviction. So it's kind of getting us into that sweet spot to where now I can still kind of do it in real time with the confidence that I'm not going to be completely blindsided by something later down the road, which I never had, because before I was doing all that research on my own as we went. The problem, Colin, is so I kind of take it from both sides. So there's like people that are like, we want everything in real time. And in the meantime, there's all these people that are going like, how irresponsible for you to be reporting on this case when you haven't even read the whole case file. So like finding that balance between the two is really difficult. In this case that we're looking at doing, there's probably, like I said, Erica's she'll be further read into it than I will be before we start. But there are already a couple of people that I know we need to interview, that we probably need to interview before we start airing any episodes. So and some of that are a couple of reasons. Sometimes it's because you don't want somebody front running them. The other thing is, if you're looking for them to explain something to you that could change the outcome of an appeal, what you don't want is for a prosecutor to say, well, she only said that because she heard you say it first on the podcast. right? So like
exactly.
you have to risk, you can't risk drawing a blank on the word I'm looking for, but you can't manipulate the testimony that's coming, that you're getting out of this person, or the statement you're getting out of them, by something you said on the podcast. So sometimes we do need to talk to people beforehand before we get that information out of there. So I hope that answers your question, Colin. Like we kind of do our best to kind of hit that sweet spot in the middle.
Well, you know what? He happens to be in the YouTube chat, and he said, "Thanks
yeah.
for explaining that. I do appreciate there must be work done behind the scenes first."
Yeah, well, there you go, Colin.
Yeah, all of that makes sense, and you have been so tight-lipped about this upcoming one, even to Zach and me. I don't know, Zach, if you've pried anything out of him.
I don't
but
know anything.
Yeah,
I have
usually at least
absolutely no.
kind of get a little preview, but
Well, this one's a little different because I've, with the attorneys that I've spoken to about the case, I've spoken with them with the understanding that until they've given a green light, I won't share anything with anybody about what we're doing. Where a lot of times, that's not the case. Where there isn't an attorney, or
right.
we can share at least with you guys. But this one, they've been very clear. We don't. It's a case where like they had kind of decided there will be no media, and then I come along and now they're thinking that this particular, we're getting a whole, tens of thousands of investigators working on it for us. This may be worth it, and this could be advantageous to us. So they're like, for us to have this conversation, we didn't have this conversation type of thing.
Well, it's crazy
Right.
because even in the past, even if I don't know something about the case, I at least know where it's at. At least I don't know anything about this case.
Well, that brings me to
it's within 100 miles of us.
Oh, okay. It's in the United States.
Right.
Yeah. This is going to be my last episode. I'm retiring because the only reason that I came on the show was I thought I would get insider information and early, and I'm not seeing that happen right now with this case. So
you'll get it before Colin does.
Colin, at least I have that. Colin, at least let me have that for a moment. Let me have that. Well, that's exciting, and that's all we have from listeners. But a great episode. Always love hearing you talk to a fellow investigative journalist.
And we got more of that coming up this weekend. Now, is it okay, Zach, if I?
It is absolutely okay now. So, do you want me to ask you, or do you just want to go into it?
Well, now we got to do something.
It's fine.
Go ahead. Yeah, you ask it.
So I know this past weekend you actually went out of town with your students working on the case that they're working on. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so we had a really, really cool. I'm very excited. There's starting to be media picking up about, like, there was at this event there was a journalist from the Cadillac News. There was a journalist from some newspapers that were up there that were doing stories. So we went to the Jeanette Robertson. They did like a walk for justice for her. They do it every year on the anniversary of when she was murdered up in Reed City, Michigan. And it was kind of cool because there were reporters that were there to report on that event. And then they see all my students there with recording equipment walking around. They start asking questions about that. And I just got an email today. I'll share it when it comes out. I'll share it on, I might not, because never mind. I don't know. It depends. If they're giving away too much information about my students, then I'm not going to share it on our fan page.
Understood and respected.
But they're kind of making the story about like these kids, because this gathering they do every year, it's been kind of, from the impression we got, that it's from the victim's sister. Like, the crowds have been dwindling over the years. There's not as many people that are interested. They're kind of feeling, and then we walked in. I walked in with eight high school students, and Lana's eyes just lit up. She's like, oh my God, there's kids here that are interested in the case. And so we made the 2.5 hour drive up there. We went to, there was like a gathering where Jeanette's sister gave a speech, and then there was a pastor that like did a prayer, and then we did like a march through town, and then we gathered back at the depot where we set everything up, and the kids they recorded some interview. They actually got an interview with the lead detective from the Michigan State Police, who's currently working on the case in the cold case unit.
Awesome.
He was super impressed. I think it was kind of one of those where, oh, there's some kids that want to talk to me. Sure. And they're asking some hard hitting questions, and
just like we were talking about.
So it's funny
you can be very disarming.
I Googled it really quick.
Yeah.
3 hours ago, an article was released from the Midland Daily News that says students on scene, downstate high schoolers investigate Jeanette Robertson cold case.
There we go. Very cool.
Cool. Very
Uh,
cool.
Yeah. So they interviewed some people who knew Jeanette. They interviewed her sister and the detective. Got a bunch of like B-roll audio, and then we actually went to the crime scene and walked through the crime scene and they were doing things like, you know, having people go upstairs and saying like, can you hear us talking down? We're trying to, you know, when this was going on in the basement, could somebody hear upstairs? There were, you know, actually getting a feel. And we had a really cool session where we're sitting and kind of doing a behavioral analysis where we're doing what I always like to do with a crime, where you're like walking through the crime scene itself. And you're like, okay, so like try to put yourself in the mind of the killer here. Like you're in this location, and I don't want to give too much away about the case before they release their podcast. But it's like, okay, like while you're here with the victim, someone came down those stairs and is looking for her, and you can see them through these bird cages. Like, what are you thinking? How are you getting out of here? And they're like talking through all that stuff. And it was just really cool too. So when we left, you know, I told them our one of the Zoom recorders we were using as we were leaving, getting back in the van, we were gonna start heading back downstate and stop and get dinner. I was like, just leave it rolling, like as they're talking, and I'm just like driving, and I'm just like listening to them just like picking apart the case and everything they learned, and they were so excited. So it just, I don't know, it's just really cool for me to hear, you know, these young adults that are like this invested in doing something. And then they were interviewed by several people, and when they were being interviewed, like just listening to them respond to it, I was like, I'm just so proud of them. You know, they were, you know, I just heard, you know, like this, you know, one student, they were asking her, you know, why did you take the class and why are you doing this? And, you know, are you interested in investigative journalism? She's one who's not particularly interested in being a journalist, but she's like, but I just wanted to do something where I can make a difference in the world. And this is an opportunity for me to do something. I'm gonna help someone. I'm gonna do something. And I'm just sitting there just welling with tears in my eyes, listening to my teenage students all just handle themselves very well. So it was a really cool trip. It's coming out soon. Somebody who wrote an article, one thing they asked, like, what's the name of the podcast going to be? And I don't know. I was like, we haven't decided yet. We do have the feed set up under Bobcat Media. We haven't like sent it out because I think what we're going to do is to establish the feed. Once we get like the name and the logo together, is I'm going to record like an intro episode that will explain everything we're doing. That will establish the feed so people can get subscribed before things start coming out. But I know we've got two groups that are damn near ready to record. They're like on their final table reads for their first 3 episodes of their scripts ready to go. So those are about to come out soon. And then the one that was doing that case, the good news is they got all this material. The bad news is I was just listening to their audio because I was you know, pulling it off the Zooms for them since I was home today, so I was ready for them. And the first thing I hear is one of the students going, we're gonna have to rewrite everything. they're like,
welcome to this.
Yeah, they wrote their whole scripts, and now they have all these audio assets now that they picked up on there. So that's gonna be soon.
So exciting.
It's been awesome, and of course I'm gonna let them decide what they name the podcast. But like I was just thinking, like, yeah, something. I want something captured in the title that captures the idea of the youth of today being underestimated by the people. Like when people listen to this and hear like, this is what these kids that you all shit on all the time and talk about, you know, you think that they're good for nothing. Like this is what they're, if you give them the opportunity and if you put your faith in them, look what they can do. That seems like a long podcast title though.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what acronyms are for. It's going to be like
Yeah.
If you break that down, it means look at these kids today that are doing great work.
Right.
I'm so excited about this, and I just don't think it can be overstated how long-lasting an impact a young person actually feeling and seeing that impact. It can change the person you become. It just can. I mean,
yeah,
it just can't be overstated. Like actually being able to see and experience a positive result of something you did that stretches out beyond your own world and your own family and your own scope, it can change the whole trajectory of a young person's life. And when they know they matter and when they know that they can make a difference, I'm so proud of you and I'm so proud of them. And I just can't wait to hear more.
I'm down as far as like the effect it will have in their life, regardless of what comes from the podcast when it's done. It's not just this group. There's other groups there's 5 groups total that are doing cases. But like I wanted to get them out in the field so they can experience when they walked through that door and Jeanette's sister just eyes lit up and was so excited that like regardless of what else you do, it's kind of like what we were talking about before, regardless of what else comes of this, look what you did for her. Like
Yes.
she's been in a place where she's just had no hope, feels like nobody cares, people are drifting away, and it's like for her to see 8 teenagers come in and say, we don't know what we're going to be able to do, but we are here to help, was just like for them to like feel that impact. It was just amazing to see.
That's beautiful. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this podcast up. I will tell you that this weekend, based on a bunch of listeners, you guys can send those recommendations in, because I was hooked. Several people through Patreon and through our Facebook page suggested that I get Bob Mata and Lauren Bright Pachenko, who are doing the Murder on Songbird Road podcast, have them come on. So I reached out to Bob. Of course, he's willing to come on. Always love having Bob on the show. And then Monday I went to the gym and turned on the first episode of it. And I ended up spending 3 hours at the gym up on the track because it's just like, oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. And there, as of this Thursday, there will be the first 4 episodes are out. So they're still in the middle of it. Like you can catch up and binge it. But Bob and Lauren will be on this Sunday. So that was a really cool conversation, and definitely if you want to pregame for that one, we'll go listen to the Murder on Songbird Road. That's coming Sunday. I have to be out of town for my other work for next week, so I'm recording ahead of time this week. Another one I had someone weirdly, imagine this, Zach. I went to the PO box, which I never do.
Boy.
Oh my goodness!
And there was
cookies.
There was moldy cookies in there from Kathy from December. No, there wasn't. There was a card and a letter in there from an organization that is trying to help people who are pregnant in prison and doing a bunch of work in that space. And they had just written this nice letter thanking us for the work we do and sent some materials for the work they do. And Eric and I were talking about, I was like, well, that would be a cool one to have on so people can hear, the whole idea with this season 16 is people that are doing good things, and they seem to be. So I'm going to record it this Thursday, but that'll be out next week. So if you're watching this live and you're a patron, you'll be able to join that interview live on Thursday at 12 Eastern time. That's what I'm going to be recording with that individual. And that's what we got coming for the next couple of weeks. So thank you guys for tuning in. We always appreciate every single one of you guys. And we'll talk to you again on next week's Friday follow-up.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
And off on the audio. Sorry, my son just texted me.
I know, my son texted me too, and I was trying to make sure the house isn't burning down.
My older one texted me, and he just got his W-2, and was like, am I going to get an $800 tax return, Dad? Pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go wrap this up. When I was saying that, I remembered that I promised that person that I was going to send them their link for tomorrow's interview, and I have not done that yet.
Cool.
So I need to get that done. I'll let you guys go. You can send your audio to Erica. She'll be in tomorrow to do the editing, and the pregame will be out tomorrow also for you guys.
Sweet.
So Janet, will you have fun? And maybe I'll tell you a little bit about that case later.
Good. Okay, great.
I
have so many things to listen to. I have Counterclock. I have to listen to the Murder on Songbird Row. I have to finish the book that you made me listen to. You didn't make me, you just recommended it. And somehow produce a festival. So I got my work cut out for me.
All right. Well, you stay busy, and we'll see you same time, same place next week.
Sounds good. Love you guys. Great to see you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, chat.